Ella. It looks like Joe M is the first one in the room. How you doing there, Joe? And there's like three other people there with you, and I know there's going to be more on the way. I've got my microphone turned on full blast, so hopefully y'all would be able to hear me as good as you hear Angela. Hey, Christine, how you doing? Good to see you again. Angela and I have a special guest in the room, Bicycle Bree from KC. How you doing, Bree?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. So nice to have you here. Since we're doing an episode about being social, I thought it would be nice to have someone who's social besides Angela on the here with us. So.
And you picked me.
Yeah. Well, the idea was basically fellowship, but I don't like the term fellowship. I don't think it really it's just not my favorite. But we know that you organize like bicycle things, and that you went to the barbecue and stuff like that. And so so that was one of the reasons we thought, hey, maybe Bree would like to come on and talk about the stuff in sober life and recovery that's been helpful for you as far as community, essentially.
Hi, Tyler. Tyler, good to see Tyler. And okay, Tyler, Angela's there. Okay, we've got 9 people in the room now. That's cool. Good to have you guys out there. Yeah, Bree. And by the way, I would have been there last weekend, but I had like a really bad headache. That the barometer pressure fell or whatever, and my sinuses were exploding. So I was not able to be there. So
that happened to me this week. Yeah, I understand exactly.
Yeah. So where should we begin? I don't really have any announcements or anything. I will tell you that last weekend, I think it was. Yes. Hi, Joe. Last Saturday, I think it was Saturday or Sunday. No, Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday night. I spoke at the Lopsided Triangle group about anonymity. And that went really well. I was nervous about it because I'm not very anonymous anymore, and I thought people can give me a hard time about that. But they were like super, super like laid back about it, and it seemed like nobody really thought much about anonymity the way I used to think about it. And people were pretty cool with my approach, and everybody else had pretty much the same approach. So it was kind of interesting. It was fun. Really nice group of people. So anyway, that was fun. Oh, Christine, that's cool. Nice that you watched. And we'll post that. They actually have the whole thing recorded, but I haven't figured out where to get it yet. I'll have to find that out. So with that, let's get this show on the road, talking about being sober and social, which is really ironic because we started this thing about being socially distanced and sober.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, Angela, you want to get this thing kicked off?
Well, sure.
All right, Bree. Bree, you can get it kicked off.
Well, one of the things I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous that there's a meeting, and there's a meeting before the meeting, and a meeting after the meeting. And when I first sobered up, you could open up you could go into these halls. You'd open up the rooms, you get this wonderful waft of secondhand smoke. It'd almost knock you over, The only thing missing was the stale smell of alcohol, So you felt right at home when you went into a meeting house. And then after the meeting, you'd all step outside for some fresh air. And that's actually, a lot of times, that's where I got my best thoughts and help, I think. It was the meeting after the meeting when my friend Fernando G said so many great things to me in my early sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
That kept me going. Things like there's no shame in being alcoholic. There's only shame in doing nothing about it. And being agnostic and sitting in that religious AA meeting like that, I hung on to those words with dear life. For a long, long time, and that was that meeting after the meeting. So. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking, it seemed like I'm thinking back to like even Alateen and stuff that the meeting after the meeting or the social aspect is where, the connections were to other people. And so it made it so that whatever was actually said in the meeting didn't didn't seem, at least to me, to be as important as the way that, the people made me feel. Like they made me feel welcome, and we'd, go out to get coffee, at 8 p.m. at night, as you do in May A in early sobriety. And there was a local place that sold pie and stuff, and just talk about things. And so it was really helpful to have a group of people to hang out with at a time when I wasn't quite sure how to do that anymore,
Oh yeah, and those are, like you're saying, those going to places, going to diners after the meetings, to have coffee and pie. That reintroduced me how to be a human being amongst other peoples.
Right. Yeah.
And also, that this whole concept of listening to other people when they spoke. When I was drinking, that alcohol was just like an amplifier to my magnephone. And it was like if you go to a bar at like 6 o'clock in the evening, and then you go to a bar at 9 o'clock, the decibel levels are so much higher because everybody's shouting at each other and nobody's listening.
Right. Right.
And that's one of the things I noticed, in my early sobriety, that we go out and people have conversations, and there was two sides of a conversation. It was a novel concept.
Yeah. Yeah. And the laughter, that was one of the things that made me think of it this week. Was last weekend, on Saturday evening, some of the women in my home group got together for a game night. And so it was cool because it was the first time, like our meeting is not meeting in person again yet. And so we're not seeing each other in person. So this was the first time seeing them since the pandemic started. And then it was, I think, 3 additional women who hadn't been to our meeting prior to the pandemic, a couple of them who got sober in the meeting during the pandemic, and then one who's been sober a long time but had stopped attending AA meetings because of the difference in worldview that happened for them. And so so it was cool to meet these people for the first time who'd I'd only seen, on a screen. So seeing full body people was fun. And then just the laughter, so much fun and laughter and joking and stuff. And that's one of the things in sobriety that, drew me into a lot of the AA culture, I guess, was that, that these people seem to have some of the same difficulties as me, yet they laughed and they seemed happy most of the time. And then you get to know them. But on the surface, they seem, no, the laughter, drew me in. And so that was really, really nice to experience that again this weekend. And it made me think about, how important the community, the like-minded people in doing things other than meetings, how much that's helped create my recovery and help me, be the person that I am today.
It is amazing, isn't it, though, Angela, the difference it makes that we've been kind of isolated the last year and a half, and then to finally have a situation where you can go out and see people again. It just is so nice. I had that experience not that long ago. It wasn't AA related, but my wife and I went out to a charity deal. I think I may have talked about this last weekend, but it was in a hamburger place, Hamburger Mary's, and they did like a bingo thing. It was a lot of fun, but we were there with a big group of people. We were there with friends. We were laughing and everything. People weren't wearing masks because at that time it was okay not to wear a mask if you were vaccinated. And it felt so good to just be around people. And honestly, that was the first time that I've actually done anything social like that since COVID, really. Honestly, I don't think I've done anything much beyond that. As I've said before, being socially distanced is a pretty natural thing to me anyway. I've really embraced the social distance thing.
Yeah.
But
the isolating comes natural.
But
it's strong with this one.
But it
was really, really, really nice. And I'm kind of looking forward to going out with my wife and to other things too, like that. But unfortunately, it's like, dang it, as soon as we start making some progress, it seems like we start falling behind again.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But if
and so people have been asking me, like, for our group, if we're ever going to, start again, and we go according to, what our building facility is allowing at the time. And our group is too large to meet inside. They have like a 10 person, per group rule right now. And so, yeah, so we haven't yet. But there is one group, the Boise Beyond Belief, that meets on Fridays, and they are doing a hybrid where they're, meeting in person, and then they have a computer set up for those who can't or don't want to meet in person. And so they're doing it that way. And so I'm referring quite a few people there, because there are, still a lot of people that do need to meet in person for the basics, I guess, in sobriety, the reminders of how not to take one drink, that kind of a thing, which again is important. But as my sobriety progressed, as I started to get a few of those under my belt, the learning how to navigate the world in a sober way became much more important. And when I do that with other people who are sober, it seems to be just a lot easier. And they're usually pretty awkward as well, and that makes it easier. So we can be awkward together. And when we hang out with people who aren't like us, don't have the weirdness factor, that can get awkward. But yeah, people within recovery hanging out, and barbecues, going to football games, dancing. In my early recovery, a couple of us ladies would go out dancing together, so that we had our little sober group, and it was fun. It was great. We woke up in the morning and could remember everything that happened, and didn't have a hangover. It was pretty neat to be able to do that, and to have other people who were interested in going out. I still had some girlfriends that loved to go out, but yeah, their goal of the evening was usually different than mine. And so spending time with other people that wanted to do life in a sober way as well, or needed to. Sometimes people didn't want to, but needed to, like I did. It was great.
Yeah, it was a game changer for me. When I think back to my early times in the program, and I was doing a lot of social stuff with people, and I never was doing that prior to that. I mean, I might have a friend or two, and we'd get drunk together or something, but for the most part, I was a solitary kind of a drinker. So having people in my life that I could just hang out with and do things with, normal everyday things with, and actually be friends with and know them for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
It was really it was therapeutic. Really, it helped me with my self-esteem, and it helped me with my everyday interactions with people at work and so forth. So it was probably even more important than the meetings themselves or any of the work that I had done. Was just the connection that I had with people outside of the meetings, and I got to where I was really looking forward to it. When I first was going to meetings, I would be in and out real fast. So I would get to the meeting and I'd leave before anybody could talk to me. And I did that for a little while until I finally started feeling more comfortable and going out with people and stuff afterwards. And then that got to be the part that I always enjoyed the most. Anchor's talking about AA dances. And I remember we used to have a lot of AA dances here. I don't know if they even have them anymore, even pre-COVID. Bree, do you know if they have AA dances here much anymore?
Boy, I don't know. No, I was going to talk about. I was thinking about AA dances myself. I know out on the plains, the traditional AA groups, at least within 100 miles, there's a Alano Club or
Yeah.
Something like we had New Beginnings in Salina. There's at least one group that sponsors, AA dances, quarterly or semi-annually or something like that, and those are a lot of fun.
Yeah, those were awkward places, but in this area, the intergroup, the local intergroup, is the one that sponsors dances and things like that. And and yeah, they were just weird, at first, because, and it seems like all of them, that people just kind of stand around for a while, and yeah,
Yeah.
as is mentioned on here, a lot of people are outside smoking, and then after a while, somebody who, usually somebody who has more time than a lot of the other people would just get out there and start moving around. And so then that was like the cue for the rest of us who were shy and stuff to get out there too. And so then it became fun, and then as time progressed and we could, do our own music for dances and stuff, then, that became, more interesting as well, because, then we had better music rather than just, fossil rock from the 60s and 70s.
They always remind me of those junior high dances.
They really did. Yeah.
No, they just you called it just right. I mean, they can start it at 7. It's not going to get going until 11.
Right. Right. People just kind of standing there and yeah, trying to figure out what to do. How do we, what do normal people do? Well, normal people don't have to go to this,
Right.
dingy place that's dark with people that, that everyone's looking uncomfortable and stand around. But, you're not one of those. So you're one of these. And this is what we do. But, it was with other people, so it was other people who were also feeling uncomfortable or weird, and all of us in different stages of being comfortable with our weirdness or not. And yeah, and so my memories of it are pretty fond of just the whole atmosphere. One of the difficulties, I think, if in the fellowship or community, a social scene, is well, I guess it goes to that saying of stick with the winners, or be in the center of the herd, or things like that. And there's some of that grain of truth in all the sayings for the most part. But I saw that some people would get caught up in the social, in the little cliques at different meetings that would develop, and and then, or the AA couples, the mega couples that are both in AA, and then they'd split up, and so then people would go in different directions based on that, and that actually did cause problems for some people, and their recovery. There were people that went out because they would get in a fight, or something would happen within the social aspect of AA. And so that was interesting for me to watch and see and kind of keep an eye on. And so I think the way that I navigated most of those was that I went to a lot of different meetings, and was kind of part of a lot of different groups. I still had my home group, but I was social in a lot of different groups. And so that way I didn't have, like all of my social activity and all of my friends in one particular group. And so when those different challenges would arise, I was never sucked in like a couple of other people I know.
That's really smart.
Yeah, that's smart.
That's really smart, because I've seen that too.
Yeah, I'm too smart for this program. I've told that a couple times. So
yeah, but I've seen that too. Part of that social that interaction. That alpha couple, like you were talking about. They split up, and the group just like there's just like this feeling in the group. This weirdness, and so. I often wonder about the dances in that aspect, but overall, I think they're really fine things, because we used to, especially for we agnostics, because the old adage is, where do you go to look for somebody else for companionship? You go to bars, or you go to churches, and that's kind of out for we agnostic alcoholics, And so I think going to many different groups, is the key thing. I also noticed that people that are, shall we say, that are both in the program and are a couple, I noticed ones that are successful have a tendency to keep the programs separate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like one person will go to one group and one person will go to another group. And both might show up at the same group, you know, but not all the time, so
Yeah.
to speak. And I've seen that work pretty well, you know, even in regular AA, you
Oh,
know.
yeah. Yeah, definitely.
You know, I really think that's, but you know, and it's really not talked about in regular AA at all. You know, the social aspect of it, you know, it just kind of
Yeah.
forms, it kind of happens. Like,
Right.
like we had this little, you can see the cliques forming. You know, they had this 8 o'clock in the morning group, and you know, we go to the service 7 o'clock. Anyway, we go to this 8 o'clock in the morning group, and after that, we go to a restaurant slash bar for breakfast. You know, and you can see the kind of cliques forming within the cliques. You know,
Right.
and I'm kind of like, okay, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just get my croissant and Starbucks and go home. So, you know, learning to navigate through that and seeing that and protecting your sobriety, you know, and serenity is number one.
You know,
Yeah.
Bree, a couple years ago, for our 5th anniversary of the group, we had Joe C come out and speak, and we had like a big party, you know, at the community center where the Free Thinkers group meets,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of fun. And after that, Kana was going to start having regular social nights, you know, at the church, and she was wanting to get that going. And then I think she was getting ready to do that, and then COVID hit, and and all had to stop. But I noticed with her and other people in the group that they were kind of getting the same benefit that I was in my early years of that social aspect. They really loved it. You know, it was really important. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought I'd mention that because that was like I was really happy to see that at our group that people were interested in doing that.
Yeah. I think that like for our group, because it was small, we were able to go and do, you know, dinner, you know, once a month or a few things like that when we first started. And that was helpful for, you know, creating, you know, a more, you know, bonding experience and getting to know each other outside of the meeting setting, you know, the 5-minute increments of, you know, your story, experience, strength, and hope and stuff. You know, get to see people's sense of humor and what they're interested in. You know, if they didn't mention bicycles every time, you know, and I do think it's important that we stopped doing it just because our group got to be much larger. And then every once in a while, we'd do something like a 4th of July. I had a thing at my house, and everybody came over for that because it was one year when the 4th of July actually fell on the Tuesday that we have our meeting. And so it worked out as a way to help. And we had enough newer people in sobriety who hadn't spent many holidays sober. So it worked out really well to have an event for them to go to on that day, because 4th of July can be, you know, rough, or it used to be rough. Because that's one of the major, you know, boozing holidays where it's okay to, you know, to go crazy and stuff because everybody does it. And so what do, you know, when that's no longer part of your lifestyle? And, you know, it makes going to a barbecue or a picnic or whatever seem much more daunting. And so having an event with people is one way to be able to, you know, help those newer people in sobriety start to learn this stuff is by, you know, inviting them to something like that. So I think it's a great idea, and I was really happy that somebody in my group decided to have the game night. For, you know, and it was small, you know, just like 6 people or something, you know, so not too overwhelming or anything. But yeah, just the feeling of laughter and, you know, and people who are on the same path. I think that's one of the other things that had come to mind with this topic was that, you know, the social aspect outside of the meetings, I think, is really important because, you know, this is where we're starting to learn, you know, these tools on how to be in relationship with other people, you know, and so it's helpful to have this because, you know, the majority of us have the same idea of what, tools are out there, at least within the AA structure. And so when you step on somebody's toes, you know how to look at your part and take responsibility for it and make amends or repair the relationship. And so, learning that, I think, was really helpful. I don't think everybody gets to learn that. I think our divorce rate shows it.
Right.
But yeah, and so I think I was thinking about, we don't talk about that in the meetings. We talk about doing steps in some meetings, and what that looks like when you write down, the people that you feel like you owe an amends of some sort to. But the social fellowship, that kind of stuff is where I started to actually practice those things in real time. And it was easier to start to learn it because the people I was practicing on were, using kind of the same frame as well. When I tried to practice it on, say, people at work, they did not always, respond in the same way as people within the recovery community and the AA community. So it just reminded me that really has been an essential part of my recovery, is the social aspect of making friends and doing stuff with other sober people, and then learning how to be in friendship, be in relationship, how to, goof up, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, whatever, and take responsibility for it and do repair. So it's an essential part of recovery.
Side conversation going on in the chat room here.
I see that.
Yeah, about the motorcycle clubs.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that they were conservative and evangelical like that, but both Anchor and Dale said that they're typically more religious than some other groups. I found that interesting. And then Joe says, I don't know what this is, so you have to explain. In Florida, there is a sober 1% motorcycle club. I don't understand. I don't know what that is. So if you can maybe let me know what that is. 1% motorcycle club.
A 1%er is the AMA, the American Motorcycle Association. Once put out this blurb that 99% of American motorcyclists are clean cut, white color, ride to Despas, wear helmets, and so the outlaw bikers they're the 1%.
So
when you see with their leathers, you'll see that 1% patch somewhere on their leathers to say, I'm an outlaw. In other words, I'm not part of society.
I never knew that.
Yeah. Here we have we have actually a couple of sober motorcycle groups. One of them is the Sober Riders, which I think is, national, has, groups all over the country. I think, my sense of these groups is that they do tend to be more religious, but I think it's because they're often made up of people who've come into sobriety through the encouragement of the legal system. And so they're often, people who've spent some time in jail and prison. And then, and so their sobriety most of the time has the flow or the feeling of being born again type of a thing. There was one group here that split off from the sober bikers because, there's, group dynamics, as there always are, and they call themselves conflicted. And and so they're bikers that are in recovery, but are conflicted about where they belong within biker community and that kind of thing. And so I'm like, okay, interesting. And so they've got the jackets, they've got the leathers, they've got however you join the groups and things like that, and they do service in the community and fundraisers and stuff like that. So it's interesting. A couple of them used to come to our meeting regularly, and one of them was one of the people who wore a cross and is very much a Christian, but he just really liked our group because of what we have to offer, and that that anybody can pretty much come to it and feel comfortable, and he has an awareness that not all meetings are like that, and so so it was interesting.
I feel like I want to learn more about silver motorcycle clubs now. Sounds like a really interesting
Yeah.
subgroup within AA.
Yeah. I was like, can I ride my scooter, with your group? And he's like, if you really want to. I'm like, there's part of me that really does. Yeah.
It probably ought to be American made.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I'll have to check all their bikes and make sure that they are. I don't know that everybody's is, but yeah. I mean, mine can go up to 70 miles per hour. The speedometer says 90, but I've never taken it over 65. So
Anchor says, is it like I want to get sober, but I still want to be a scumbag? That is kind of conflicting.
Yeah. I don't know. When they explained it to me, it was just something on the. I think they mean it more on lifestyle and maybe even more on the faith-based of it. That maybe there's an aspect of that. But yeah, I haven't talked to them in a while, so I can't quite remember, why they were conflicted. But yeah, and it could have something, completely different. They may have just been telling me that, and it actually has some sort of deeper meaning within sober biker community. I don't know, but but yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I'm like, okay, interesting name, and yeah, all right then.
How funny. I never knew about all this stuff about motorcycle groups, but also Anchor joined a Mini Cooper enthusiast group, but they seem to be a little too intense.
Yeah, I could see that, definitely.
My wife has a Mini Cooper.
That's why bicycles rule, because they're always intense. But yeah, on the plains they had these clubs too, and I have to make this observation as a former corrections officer that you're not going to get pulled over with a Jesus patch on your back as many times as you will with a Son of Silence patch on your back.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just had to point that out. That's all I do.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I thought about getting one for my scooter, and I'm like, nope. We don't want to draw any extra attention from the popo. So yeah.
Did you work at the state pen in Lansing?
No, I worked in Hutchinson and Ellsworth.
Oh, okay.
I was smart enough to stay away from Lansing.
Well, I went to high school in Lansing, so I knew that prison was always right in my vision all the time. And anyway, I grew up in a prison town, so I don't know, kind of.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. I'm too nerdy. I joined a cosplay group instead. Yeah, those cosplay groups can get a little out of hand too. They really can. And and mixing up. Maybe you should start a sober cosplay group. I don't think I've actually heard of that. I think some of them are by default. The nerdy factor.
Oh my goodness!
But still, I think that might be a good way to go.
Oh man,
yeah.
You never know what direction these live streams will go, but this is really interesting, and I love that. I love your name, the Birdo watches movies. I like that. I don't know what it means, but I think it's cool.
The campouts on the plains are really, in the smaller towns where they have like one meeting a week. Usually, it's like Russell, Kansas will sponsor a campout one weekend, and then the next weekend, like Lincoln will sponsor another one, and then Phillipsburg, and like that. They just kind of rotate weekend to weekend, and they always usually have a nice speaker meeting, under the campfire and starlight, and so those and fishing, and kayaking and all those wonderful things you do at a campout, but without a lot of the trauma because there's not a lot of drunks hanging around.
Right.
The only drama I've ever seen has been with other campers, but usually there's enough sober people around that doesn't. It's not a special thing,
Oh yeah, definitely. We had one. It was mostly the young people's group, and most of the young people in the young people's group were, those of us in our early 30s, so they weren't all that young. but we were camping in the backwoods of Idaho, And we were there during they're called Atlanta Days, but it's a tiny mining town, and they have like a big party, and it just happened to fall on the same weekend. And so we had some people that were wandering into our camp that were really, really intoxicated. And one of them had like a bucket that, I guess the game they were playing is they would go to different camps, and each camp would pour some booze into the bucket, and then the person would drink it. And so they were just not well. And so by the time they got to us, we're like, we don't have any. And they were grateful for that. But they had to sit down. And so they ended up sitting down in the middle of a campfire AA meeting. And it was hilarious. So, I didn't go to too many campouts just because I'm not a big camper in general. But this one was one that I remembered because it was definitely a personality learning experience. We were playing, I think, charades, and I got really upset because they were kind of deciding the words based on how smart the person was. And so some of them were quite easy and fun, fun loving. And then it came to me, and the other team gave me the word amoeba, and I just basically lost it. That I just felt so annoyed that I guess it was supposed to be a compliment, but it just pissed me off because it seemed very unfair, and I didn't like the rules, and I didn't like that nobody was paying attention, that this was not unfair. And and so it was one of my learning experiences on being in a community, in a group, and not getting my way and stuff. So that was a fun one. But yeah, I think that one I went cliff diving too. The only time I think I've ever been cliff diving into a river. And yeah, it was one of those things where I just had to be like, don't think, just do it. And,
was it very high up?
It seemed like it. I don't actually recall.
It always does.
It just seemed like it. Yeah. It seemed like, one of those things that if I saw it now, I'd be like, kids are dumb, Darwin or something, some sort of thing that I'd be like, no. But at the time, I'm like, I had to prove that I wasn't afraid, even though I was terrified. And and so it was helpful. It taught me to change my mindset and be in the idea that I've helped a lot of people. I've done good work on the earth, and so if jumping off this cliff I die, then then it's okay. I've done my time. So but it was an adventure, and that's probably why I don't go camping on those camping things anymore. But
that's something I just thought about.
Yeah. I just want to point out that Angie, you're broadcasting from a room full of binders, and you're worried about being picked on by the word amoeba. That just looks mind-boggling to me.
But yeah, what are you saying? Yeah,
I would have found something a little harder.
Yeah, I didn't have an adequate binder system at the time, so back then. But yes, you are probably right. Yeah, I may have created some difficulty for myself.
Beardo says that podcasting's gotten him into a few social groups. The atheist group sounds interesting. That Joe was in an atheist group that he was talking about. Beardo, do you have a podcast? Is that what you're talking about? You have your own podcast, or is it a podcast that you listen to? I'm kind of interested. Anyway, and anyone can call in, by the way. We have a number. You can call 844-899-8278. No, Angela, one thing I was thinking about is I think that one thing that is helpful about the social aspect and seeing people outside the meetings, maybe in a way it also makes, when you do go to the meeting, that especially if you're really new, it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. It makes you feel more relaxed. It gives you more of a bond maybe with these people. I kind of looking back at my kind of first 4 or 5 years or whatever, I kind of got that sense that, when I went to a meeting, it was something I always looked forward to. There were people there that I knew, and I don't know. maybe just seeing them outside the meeting kind of made that so much, kind of reinforced that feeling for me.
Yeah, it was almost like they were friends.
Yeah, almost like they were friends.
Yeah, no, I think that is the point, that it's helping, us at whatever stage of life we're in, learn how to be in relationship with people, and develop, quality friendships, and so, yeah, so some of the stuff that was important to me when I got sober was, I was single and still, fairly young and still wanted to be cool. And, but the truth is that, I'm very introverted and nerdy and like binders and office supplies. And so creating a community around myself that accepted someone like me and where, I found, people like myself. Yeah, it was important. So I would, never underestimate the social aspect of AA, but, the awareness of that sometimes, that can go in a direction that you don't like, or that can be difficult for other people.
Another interesting side conversation going on in the chat room. I've just been kind of following it real quickly here, but they're starting talking about podcasting. And so Beardo has a podcast where he talks about being an atheist working through the big book, which I think is kind of interesting. I did that at one time, and I want to check that out. The name of his podcast is An Atheist Reads the Big Book of AA. So I'll have to check that out. And then Jeffrey Munn popped in here, the author of Staying Sober Without God. And he is saying that he wants to start a podcast. That would be really cool too.
Right.
Yeah, I think that Jeffrey would be really good for that. The podcast, and then someone else mentioned something about podcasts could also get you into trouble. I'm not sure I know about that. But yeah, interesting. I'm kind of getting into the social aspect of that too. Starting to meet other podcasters, having them on this podcast, and I don't know, I kind of like that, especially podcasters that are in recovery. And I'm becoming more interested in kind of connecting with more of them, because for a long time I was just kind of doing my own thing and kind of not connecting with other podcasters. But it's kind of fun when you start meeting other people that do the podcast in recovery also, because you find out that we have a lot in common. Oh, please talk, because I'm sounding.
I just wanted to point that out as part of the podcast community, is that sometimes you're left hanging, and you have to be comfortable with that.
You do.
Yeah.
Dead air.
No, it's funny because people are like, your podcast. I'm like, what? I don't have a podcast. Yeah, and they're like, the thing you do with John, and I'm like, yeah, I co-host the live stream, but it's not my podcast, which is kind of nice for me because I don't have to prepare for it really. I just kind of just show up, and sometimes we think about it ahead of time, and I look up things just because that's part of who I am. But in general, we just show up, and I was listening, to a podcast because that's pretty much what I do, in my spare time when I'm not creating binders. And and I was just thinking that, this person has a podcast, and then this other person started a podcast after, being on the first person's podcast. And I'm like, who doesn't have a podcast right now? It is definitely a podcast kind of world. And I like it because, people can put information and ideas out there, and I don't have to listen to them right away. I can on some of them, but they're there for me to check out. And I was looking at one of them and looking at the comments in it, and my partner was like, why? Why do you pay attention to what other people said? And I'm like, there's a feeling of a social feeling about that as well, of being part of a listening community, and that I enjoy. And that, people are just really funny a lot of the times, and make me laugh. There's a few trolls that just comes with the territory. But in general, I enjoy that aspect of the at least the YouTube online community, podcast community, the ones that do it through YouTube, because then, I can see the different comments and people can bring up ideas or questions that I hadn't thought about while listening to the podcast or additional information. And and that's helpful as well. So
I kind of feel like this live stream that we do every Friday is kind of a social event for me anyway. You know?
Well, actually,
I think it
I
is.
to bring that up. It really is. It's kind of like a giant international AA party.
Yeah.
If you want to say, you know, that's what I kind of look at it.
Yeah.
Like I get my cheese and my crackers, and you know, I listen to the podcast, and
then you type bicycle every once in a while.
Yes, and we're talking about bicycles, you know, here and there. But you know, I'm
going to have to create a binder about bicycles for you.
No, thank you. I have a USB disk full of stuff.
All right.
So, yes, and you know, I watch the Tour de France, which is a social thing. But I really do think that we're seeing an evolution in social, as AA and the social aspects of it. I think these podcasts are part of it. I know the Zoom meetings are. You know, and one of the great things that happened to me last week is David S., our good friend. He's a comedian, and he and I had never met each other. And we had been sitting in these Zoom rooms for 15, 16 months and had never seen each other face to face. And last Saturday, we finally got to give each other a hug. And it was so wonderful, you know, because, you know, in the very beginning, you know, we opened up these rooms and it was like everyone was just scared, you know. The thought was, we're all going to die and there's an idiot in charge. Well, you know, and you look out there and you know people are drinking. I mean, and of course, I'm afraid I'm going to get drunk, you know. You have to be afraid, you have to be straight up, you know. And I've always taught when you're scared to go to the AA meetings, you know, because there's unity and strength, you know, in numbers. And so we were sitting around there, you know, there'd be like 9, 15 people in the meeting. And Dave was one of those people, you know, those long timers that really stepped up, you know, he led the meetings, you know, we went to, as we grew and grew. So it was so wonderful to get to see him, you know, and it also, it was those people, I noticed that it was usually the people that stayed for those meetings after the meetings that did a lot of the stepping up, you know, when we first started those Zoom meetings. And that was very appreciative too.
No, that was one of the difficulties that, you know, I think we talked about it on here one time that I had, was seeing people who felt like they were going to drink and die if they didn't go to an in-person meeting, and that you know really bothered me because because it felt to me like, you know, that is a very cult atmosphere, and so it bothered me that, you know, they felt that way about AA, that they had latched on to that so hard that they were really scared and really concerned. And so I couldn't, you know, discount their fear because it was real, but it bothered me a great deal and reminded me why I like to participate in this podcast and things like that, so that people can see that there's a different way to think about things and do things.
Now, what is that noise?
I think it's Bree.
Bree, how are you doing over there? I remember actually being at the central office when all this COVID was, when groups first started meeting online, going and stopped meeting in person. I was at the central office, and the guy was telling me, he said, well, I don't know. He said, you know, it's either COVID's going to kill you or drink is going to kill you. What's your choice? And it's like, well, you know, oh boy. So he in other words was saying that it's either either take your chances and with COVID and go to meetings or get drunk. It's like that's kind of a false choice, you know. That's
exactly. Exactly. It's a left and right path thing, and there's 10 paths.
Yeah. What are you eating, potato chips over there, Bree, or what's going on? I'm just giving you a hard time.
That would be cruel because I can't eat potato chips yet. I still have another couple months before I can eat potato chips. Yeah. Dang dental stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different podcast that we'll do, is being responsible in recovery. Being kind to your future self by doing the responsible stuff, like actually getting the dental work that you need and paying for it. So, but yeah, fun in recovery, sober and social. That's what's been on my mind this week after going to, and hanging out with some people again, is just remembering how important that's been for my recovery, to have sober friends, and to start learning, my social skills by talking to other people who had a similar framework of, of at least trying to work on themselves, and looking within themselves for, their parts and things, and and then learning how to adjust to a world where a lot of people don't. That still is difficult for me sometimes.
I am learning so much. But Joe, now I don't know why I don't know things, but Joe was recommending Artie Lang. Are you familiar with Artie Lang, Angela?
No.
He's a comedian, and there's I just Googled him real quick. There's a lot of stuff about him. Where did Artie Lang go when he disappeared amid a battle for sobriety, from the New York Post? Different articles like that. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, it sounds like he might be too famous to want to talk to us, but you never know.
I did see a really good movie about the social aspects of recovery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Thanks for Sharing.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it. So
yeah, that's the movie about the sex addicts, right, Bree?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got it by accident. My wife and I used to use a lot of the library,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so we go and pick up movies, and we just picked that up as a random one.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't watch a lot of recovery movies.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we kind of felt like we'd lived it,
Right.
So it's like, it's not really entertainment. Excuse me. However, this was just exceptional. I really love the social aspects of it, And the thing I really hated about it is that I could see myself in some of these people, in some of these characters, and I didn't like what I was seeing. So it was a very reflective movie to me, as far as the way I presented myself socially. Okay, I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you got time to look it up, it's a very good movie.
Yeah,
I just
think I
posted
get
a
the
link
idea of what you're
actually
saying. Yeah.
to a podcast that Ben and I did about that movie some time ago. It was episode 59.
Oh,
It was a
nice.
great movie. It was really a good movie. Yeah, we used to have a lot of fun doing episodes about recovery movies, and that was
Right.
a really good one. I like that one too. And you're
Yeah,
right,
I
Bree.
haven't. I'm trying to think of, has there been any in the last couple years that we should
recovery
do?
movies.
Yeah, I
Oh,
can't
well,
think of
we
anything.
just did that one. We just did one on what was it, Angela? Just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah. We did. We're so on top of
that
pop
was a
culture.
good movie. That was a good
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Dang, I can't remember the name of it all of a sudden.
Stars Born.
Yes.
Yeah, Star is Born. The Star is Born.
It's not a good movie. I hate
You didn't like it?
No, I hate it.
Why?
Because the writing's really crap.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
I hate the writing. It just, I
Okay.
think the script's really terrible. Yeah.
I didn't really pay attention to the
I
writing.
didn't either.
That's the interesting thing to me, is that I thought that what's his name's portrayal was really good of the alcoholic, country singer, so that seems to be what got me and what seemed realistic to me. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen. Didn't really pay attention to the writing, and usually I take in a lot of different aspects when I'm watching a movie, but now I realize that, I don't think that I paid attention. I did dislike the main song from it though, because it didn't make any sense. But as far as the actual movie, I still liked it. I liked, what's his name? Obviously a lot, because I remember his name, but yeah.
Have you
So
ever heard
somebody
of
says,
Louder Milk, the TV show?
oh,
I have not either. She said, Trudy says it's about a guy in early recovery that runs a meeting.
huh.
I'll have to check that out.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I should write some stories about, a lot of the different meetings. That'd be interesting. Like the one that broke apart because they got in a fight about whether they should have snacks or not. And so the meeting just completely fell apart and disbanded, and other people started different meetings, all because, some people thought that they should have cookies and refreshments, and some people didn't think that that was an appropriate use of AA funds, seventh tradition funds. So, yeah, there's definitely a script in there somewhere. I'm pretty sure of it.
Another
I think
thing,
something
I
could
remember
go here.
out on the planes, they would have like the birthday celebrations. And a lot of times, they would have a lunch. They'd have a potluck, and then have the birthday party after the potluck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't do that much. Usually for sobriety, anniversaries and stuff. When we were smaller, I started making cupcakes and treats and things like that. And then as we got bigger, other people started doing it. It kind of became if you had a sponsor, they kind of brought stuff for you, that sort of thing. But yeah, I do know that there are some meetings that have like a specific day where they celebrate all the recovery milestones that happened in that month and stuff. But yeah, we never really partied. So, yeah.
So those was always, I didn't go to those a lot until I had a sponsor said I really should go to those, so that the newcomer could see that there is success, right? And I didn't think about that until they explained it to me that way. So that's when I would start. At least I would go to pick up my chip,
Right.
And when I started sponsoring people, if I had a sponsoree make a certain milestone, I tried to be there for them, if I could. Now, of course, there again, it's life on life's terms. I was working, I could be halfway across the state, on that Saturday. So a lot of times I couldn't do what but that's what you get sober for, is to get a life.
Right. Yeah. And being social with people and doing that stuff is how you learn to do that and actually get a quality life, at least a reasonable likeness to it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Something along those lines.
The quality of life on bicycles. What could you ask for more?
Right. Exactly.
So when we started this, Joe mentioned that there's something going on. Is it Sunday, I think? Oh gosh. Anyways, called Varieties of Secular Experience, Navigating AA in a Secular Way. And it's being presented by the Living Sobers group, the Freethinkers Living Sober group in Verde Valley, Arizona. And that's going to be at 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. And I'm going to put the meeting ID and passcode in here. And Joe, are you still there? I can't remember if you said it was Saturday or Sunday. They don't put the day on there. Anyway, there you go. We'll have to figure that out later, what day it is. But June 27th, when was that?
27th?
Yeah, I'll figure it out. So it must be on a Sunday. Okay, so it'll be this Sunday then. Yeah. There you go. Sunday, Joe says. Yep, very good.
Very cool.
All right, I think I might check that out. There's still so many interesting things going on now and post COVID. Things like that we never had before. I sure hope that happens when the world returns to a post COVID state, whatever that, if it ever will again, because that's really cool that they do all of that. It's Sunday. I'm going to check it out.
Sunday.
Yep, Sunday,
yeah.
And I put the meeting information in there too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and all the people that mentioned, podcasts that they have that they'd like to draw attention to, feel free after the the live stream stops, to post that
Please.
in the comments, and those comments are a lot easier for people to access to
Yes.
find out about your podcast, because
please
I'd like to check them out as well.
Me too. I was surprised about the number of people who either have podcasts or are going to start one just in this little room here of ours. So really cool. I was happy to hear that. So please do put links in there in the comment section, when the live stream goes down, because that way you can actually put a link in there and people can find it. So because I want to check out some of those too. Atheist Working the Big Book one sounds really interesting. I was thinking about doing that at one time, and anyway, I'm over the big book now. So anyway, but I still think it's a good podcast. I'm gonna definitely check it out. Okay, so I guess we have we've taken up an hour, and I'll go ahead and play a little song to get us out of here. Oh boy, there we go. So anyway, thanks everybody for listening. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Bree, for joining us. It was great to have you on here.
Well, thank you for
Angela.
having me.
Yes, and Angela, as always, great to have you and talking to you. And Josie, thank you for posting all that information about what's going to be going on at the Freethinkers Living Sober group, and for everybody who participated here today. It's just been great. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Ride a bicycle.
Ride a bike.